Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. Hopefully my sound is okay this morning. It was a bit low on Tuesday, but welcome to Solid Ground on this, the 21st day of August in 2025. And as I can see from the comments already rolling in, it's a cracker day, not only here in Auckland, where I'm based, but across the country. And I have to say, I love these cold, crisp days. Granted, I prefer summer, but if it's a choice between cold, crisp days and grey and rainy, you can guess which one I'm going to go for. Hey, look, anyone who's new, welcome to Solid Ground. It's 20 to 30 minutes where I discuss the topics of the day, things political, cultural, ethical, social, which have caught my eye. But as regulars know, and there's literally hundreds of them, as the regulars know, if you've got any thoughts or questions on anything I'm discussing or something you want to raise with me that's different, then jump onto Family First's YouTube channel or its Facebook channel or Facebook page and comment there. And they come in directly to me here in the studio. And as people know, I get to press fancy little buttons and I get to say hello to people, including Harrison, who I believe has a new job. Rachel was telling me, Harrison, that you're busy walking dogs now. That's a great little business, but lovely to have you along this morning. Catherine, always a delight to have you here. My favourite named person, Foo Dogs Trucking. I still laugh. I love it. A jolly good morning to all and to you as well. Good morning, Jackie. I can imagine it being a little bit chilly there in Ratihi. Kia ora, George. Or Moreno, lovely to have you along. Good morning to Rosie. Look, how could we do a show without you, Rosie? And there in lovely, lovely Taupo. Good morning. We've got Michael. Good morning to you. Edmund, lovely to have you along. I know there's a message I need to reply to the last 48 hours. A bit like my life has been a little bit busy, but I will reply more fully. Who have we got next? Nigel, lovely to have you along. It's crisp there in Te Awamutu. Darren's backing me up that it's rather chilly here in Auckland. I've got the heater raging beside me. Well, not so much raging, but heating. Mike, lovely to have you along. Welcome. And who have we got? Chris there in Napier. Good morning. Anna Marie, hello to you. We've got Lynette. Good morning. Oh, another Michael. I think the Michaels might be winning today. Campbell, lovely to have you along there from Carpety. Fantastic. I wondered who would be the first to pick up on this. You win, Harrison. I am wearing new glasses. My old ones beginning to fail, and I was having trouble seeing. I must be getting older. So yes, I'm wearing new glasses. So well done. There's no prizes for that, I'm afraid, but well done. Hey guys, a few things to touch on today. Some heavy topics. It's actually related to a podcast I released yesterday, and some news that just happened to come at the same time. But before I'm looking for something as we're talking. Yes. Just a reminder, the Forum on the Family is next week. So this time next week and Friday, the Forum is on. Well, strictly the Forum is on from Thursday night, where we're going to have Carolee Smith and Amanda Ackman speaking. So Thursday night's actually part of the conference. It's not just a meal, though there will be that as well. You need to register. You've got till basically this Sunday to register. There's still some seats available. There are literally hundreds and hundreds attending. I assume some of you wonderful people. So come along. We'd love to have you there. So we have an amazing lineup of speakers. I'll be there, which probably might put some of you off, but that can be made up for with Bob being around. And Jackie's beat me to it, so to speak. This is the interview she's referencing, is the one I did here. There's my little button. There we go. So, and good morning to Rabbit Hole and Judith. I see they've just come on. And Ian, lovely to have you here. So I did this podcast yesterday with Sharon. Well, rather, I released it. I interviewed Sharon about a week ago. She's a medical doctor. She's a pediatric anaesthetist, so primarily working with children, and also has worked in critical care. So she and I actually had a very long discussion around what euthanasia drugs actually do. So it can be a little bit of a confronting conversation, but one that needs to be had, because the long and the short of what we're discussing, and it's going to become very relevant in a moment because there's a story that broke in the New Zealand newspapers yesterday, is that you're often presented with the end of life and particularly when they use these lethal drugs. And the combination of drugs, you're not actually meant to know what they are here in New Zealand. The Ministry of Health actually controls access to them and doesn't let us know what they are. Now, in some ways, that's not an imprudent thing, you'd have to say, guys, because you, excuse me, you don't want a whole lot of people copycatting. But the other element, and why this discussion with Sharon was quite important, is she highlights that actually the drugs that are used are not always so... I'm trying to find the right words here. It's not always easy, simple, as presented. Certainly here in New Zealand, excuse me, here in New Zealand, euthanasia, assisted suicide, is just presented as peaceful and nice and easy. Sharon says, well, that's not always the case. And why it becomes really important, as I keep saying, is this was in the news yesterday. This is an actual case, excuse me, this is an actual case here in New Zealand. A doctor's been investigated for terminating a New Zealander's life. Now, granted, they would have requested this assisted dying, as they call it, but wasn't properly sedated, which is pretty shocking when you think about it. And as I say, it was just by, well, that in itself shocking. I think for me, you've got to let that just sink in for a moment. So it's been investigated, which is positive, although there's also some research which came out yesterday, and I'm not going to cover it here today, but it's saying actually a lot of the doctors don't know what they're doing. So that's why this podcast, I think, becomes really important, because Sharon does know what she's doing as an anaesthetist. Want to stress she's not a euthanasia doctor. She doesn't do assisted dying, but she knows how the drugs work. And as I say, things like sedatives wear off very quickly. And you might recall, well, maybe you don't, because I might not have mentioned it here, but getting tongue-tied now, euthanasia deaths don't happen quickly. Some can take 5-10 minutes, some can take hours. And that's important, because as Sharon's pointing out, things like propofol, which is a very popular sedative that they use in the likes, well, they use it here too, in the United States and Canada, wears off very quickly, within about 30 minutes. So just bear that in mind when people say it took a loved one a couple of hours to die by euthanasia, that the likes of propofol, the sedatives wear off. But the real kicker, and then I'll move on from here and look at some of the comments, the real kicker is here in New Zealand, as overseas, they use something called neuromuscular blockers to basically paralyze patients. They do that for the death penalty in America, and they do that so that those watching, repeat, those watching, don't see any movement, twitching, heavy breathing, nothing. And Sharon, through her practice and work and her experience in anesthesia, is saying actually there are instances where someone is actually in pain, is struggling, does want to speak, does want to do something, but no longer can. These neuromuscular blockers basically just paralyze the person. You have the absolute horror situation. The horror situation where someone, in this case being euthanized, is actually conscious, but there is absolutely no way to communicate that. So absolutely horrific to think about it. But she's great. It's actually a really insightful talk, and as I say, it's not just all theory. This is something that's now happening here in New Zealand. And as I say in the podcast, we don't over-egg this. This is not an all and every case. But I suppose the key theme that I really want to just come back to, and I'll end here on this particular topic before I take the questions, is we are presented in New Zealand by proponents of euthanasia, by the media by and large, that this is a calm, peaceful, easy, no problems, nothing to see here situation. Well, there clearly is things to see here, and when you talk to experts like Sharon, you realise that even the drugs can burn your throat. They may not paralyse you completely, and so on. So it's pretty horrendous to think about it that way. Anyway, there's nice easy topic. There's something positive coming after this. Harrison's asking. Sorry, I'm looking back through the comments, and there's a lot of them. So Harrison, in terms of this, euthanasia is done on animals, but it's also now for humans in a number of countries, about 10, I think, or so countries, the likes of the state of Oregon in the United States, Belgium, the Netherlands, in the UK, the United Kingdom's debating it at the moment. And Harrison, difficult question for me to answer quickly. There are those that say euthanasia is choosing to end your life. And so many of us would say it is akin to suicide. Others would say, no, it's different because it's a conscious, rational choice. So it is similar, but big discussion, something definitely to read up on. So just so much here. Rabbit Hole saying, in retirement homes, is it true certain drugs are used to quicken the dying? It's not medically ethical to do so, but it is quite possible that it is happening. So I just want to make two distinctions there because I think this is an excellent question from Rabbit Hole. So I'm without doubt that in some retirement villages, a cocktail of drugs are being given to patients to speed up their death. Probably is a mixture of various sedatives and so forth. You'd have to have a lot, by the way, a huge amount of morphine. I remember a palliative care doctor saying to me, you could have a huge amount of morphine and basically you're asleep for days. But yes is the short answer, but the important part, it's not ethical. Doctors are not meant to quicken someone's death. You can make it more peaceful and more calm. So obviously, in recent years through parents and parents-in-law have been around their deaths, and a lot of drugs are, of course, prescribed to make those last days and hours more peaceful. But really importantly, it didn't end their life. But it does happen, undoubtedly, and something that we need to keep an eye on. Awake, not woke, as they've just witnessed to euthanasia. Yeah, I mean, everyone knows where I sit on this. I'm strongly opposed. I personally think, and I can't speak into Awake Not Woke's experience or wider family and friends, but I think it leaves a trauma in those still living. That's my take on it. Oh my Lord, there are so many comments. Justine saying human have souls. So this is in regards to the question around euthanasia on animals versus humans. And I would argue too there is a difference between animals and humans. Interestingly, in the interview with Sharon, she points out that the use of neuromuscular blockers, so the paralysing drugs, which they put into humans for euthanasia. So again, for the family, it all just looks peaceful and calm because you're fully paralysed. They don't allow that in the United States for animals. And you heard me right. So you're not allowed to deploy neuromuscular blockers for animals, but you can for, excuse me, you can for humans. So I just thought that was fascinating. Yeah, this is one of the, excuse me, still got a dry throat. Yeah, I think this is one of the misconceptions. Don't get me wrong, you can overdose people on anything. Morphine, you can overdose them on water. I wouldn't suggest either. But a lot of people will say, hey, look, the doctors gave my mum or dad or aunt or uncle or loved one a huge amount of morphine and that's what killed them. The palliative care doctors that I've engaged with and physicians over the years say, look, the last bit of morphine you see is a bit like seeing the last cup of tea. And what they mean by that is just because the doctors have given a dose of morphine to provide peace and calm to a loved one doesn't mean that that's what actually killed them, that the person was dying. It's just that people associate that last action with the death. So really important, most of the time, not all, there's always exceptions, but most of the time, when you're at a loved one's bedside, the doctors, the nurses are medicating the patient to make sure they're at peace and they're calm. But really importantly, they are dying, like my father was a few months ago. He's dying. He's going to die, in a sense, regardless of what they give him. But that's what a woman called Laura Finlay, she's actually a baroness out of the UK, and then one of the top specialists in palliative care was saying to me, she says, yes, a lot of families will see the doctor or the nurse give a little bit more morphine, and then the patient slips away a few minutes or an hour later. But she says they don't also see, the last cup of tea and blame that. So probably over-explained that one. And yes, Harrison's noting too, if you drink too much water, yeah, that's absolutely right. Don't drink too much. Jackie's backing me up, which is always nice. Always nice. Very good. Anyway, I have overwhelmed with comments here, and it seems there's a few other debates going on as well, which has very little to do with what I'm talking about here. And Amanda is nailing it too. And actually, this will be a nice segue to drugs. Actually, there's a lot more to it there. Hold on. Let me see. Yeah, drugs are meant to be used for comfort, not to hasten death. but it does leave a trauma because we do care and grieve. Yeah, I think so. I mean, grief, I've always loved the quote from Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen. Grief is the price we pay for love. I've just always thought that was a lovely quote. Okay, where am I looking? Here we go. There. This is actually some good news. This is in the United States, because Costco here doesn't, but do this anyway. But in the United States, Costco's decided to stop selling the abortion pill called Mifepristone, or Mifepristone. There we go. Get my tongue around that one. I just thought this was some good news. There's been a lot of lobbying to say to the likes of Costco and also to CVS and Walmart, if you know the brands there, to not stock this drug, because of course it kills babies. That's what it's designed to do. But also it can cause harm for women. And you might remember, it'll be about maybe 6 months ago, I drew attention to some research that's coming out of the United States, which shows 1 in 10 women who use this drug, this abortificant, it actually causes them major harm. And you've got to remember, this is not done under the supervision of any doctors. You can just walk into a pharmacy, or here in New Zealand, the same. You can walk into a pharmacy, you can order it, get sent to you in the post. There's no one actually keeping an eye on what's happening. So it's risky. So even if you're someone who thinks abortion's okay, and obviously I don't, furiously pro-life, but there's major risk. So I think this is a good step by Costco there in the US. I want to stress that it does not apply to New Zealand. You can get Mifepristone here in New Zealand, but not through the Costco in West Auckland. So just really wanting to stress the difference there. And then I just thought I'd make a comment on this. I don't know if you caught it. This is to do with Māori wards and the ongoing debate around the Treaty Principles Bill and how we engage Māori in New Zealand. And I'm not so much interested in debating that. That's more of a political topic. But this is a group called Common Grace, I believe. And you might go, have I heard of them before? They wrote 400 of these church leaders, well, somewhat church leaders, wrote an open letter months ago around the Treaty Principles Bill saying, hey, look, we don't like the Treaty Principle Bill. And then a couple of days ago, 100 of them, so a quarter of the number, but 100 of them have written to say that they support Māori wards. So they're allowed to do that. It's perfectly fine to say I'm not here to debate the ins and outs of Māori wards. I just thought it was fascinating because I've talked about this group before, a real mixture. But basically, I'm just amazed at these church leaders that if it comes to issues to do with indigenous rights, climate change, any woke issues. In fact, if you go to Common Grace's website, it really just reads like a left-wing wish list of woke issues. As I say, climate change, the Treaty of Waitangi, and so forth. Which again, they're perfectly welcome to have an opinion on. But I'm struck too how these church leaders are completely and utterly silent when it comes to a whole range of other issues in our society. We just touched on 2 big ones. I mean, ethical issues like euthanasia and abortion aren't easy, but they're basically quiet. I never hear peep from these guys. The breakdown of the family, the nature of marriage, the importance of children, the issues around vaping, drug use, cannabis, meth. These guys seem remarkably quiet. And really, that was the main thing I just wanted to point out. I just find it almost hypocritical of these church leaders who, as I say, very, very quick to opine on what are politically acceptable topics of the day, but show no courage to speak into other areas which are just as important. Which is why we're very grateful for you guys. And actually, Ben's nailed it. Good. Ben should be hosting this show because he gets right to the point. They promote social justice, which is a Marxist principle. And Ben is right, and people have heard me say it before. Social justice, as we know it today, is neither social nor just. So when you hear a lot of these people talking about social justice, it's neither social nor just. It's not social, because actually it's not bringing people together. It's usually based around victim narratives, and nor is it just, because it isn't actually based on principles of justice. It's usually based on principles of power, which is why Ben is 100% correct that it's really basically just something Marxist. And Jackie's saying that she remembers the Treaty Principles Bill letter. Yeah, and as I say, for me it's not commentary on the Treaty Principles Bill or the wider treaty issues. It's just how struck I am by these religious leaders who pretty much only pop up and write letters like this when it's acceptable topics, politically and culturally acceptable topics. So my challenge to those 100 church leaders, and the headline here is wrong, it's not 100 churches, it's a potpourri of different individuals who have an opinion that, again, I want to stress they're welcome to. But you never hear them, hide nor hear of them, which, always a bit disappointing. Speaking of hide nor hear, Bob's actually on the platform at the moment, but he's joining me, or I'm joining him tonight, so 5 o'clock, here again on, all the platforms that you're listening to me at the moment. Political Playback is where Bob and I will discuss the political we'll discuss the political topics of the day, and there is no shortage. There's still all the leadership rumblings. We've had the teachers' strike, of course, calls for extra pay. At the same time, literacy rates are going down. So look, there is a huge amount for Bob and I to talk about. A reminder too that you can access all of this content for free because of probably a lot of you actually, and thousands of others who donate so generously to Family First. You can watch, read, and listen everything we do. So obviously you're watching now, but all of this content remains online. Obviously we write frequently. In fact, I've just written a story around transgender care in Finland and the big changes that are happening there. And of course you can listen. We are now on Spotify, which is great. And as you know, I also write. I've got my On Point. This one is I actually quite enjoyed writing this. Some reflections on the nature of beauty. And you're going, well, that's a strange image for Simon to have up. But it's very relevant to the topic. Bob, of course, is doing his McBlog. So make sure you check that out. As you know, we always have our morning show. Look, there's just no shortage of stuff. And really the final reminder before I head off is that Forum on the Family. We are excited about this year's lineup. It is next week. I'm actually picking up Amanda Ackman this weekend. She's in the country. But we've got all of these amazing speakers. You've got 2, 3, 4 days left to register. We would love to see you there and in person. And small as it is, we'll be selling mugs. If you haven't got one of these yet, or I think we have 7 designs of mugs for all the different shows. They'll be on sale. In fact, my lovely wife Rachel is going to be running that little stall. But guys, I need to head off. You need to head off. As always, it's been an absolute delight to have you guys here. Thank you, Harrison. I can see he's making a run for it. And others, Rabbit Hole. But I'm going to say goodbye. Have a wonderful day. I might see some of you at 5 o'clock tonight. Otherwise, I'll see you next Tuesday.